All right, so we're back with the Personal Insight Questions video series that we're doing here at UC Davis with undergraduate admissions experts. And today's guest is
Devin Bohart. I'm the Associate Director for First Year Evaluation. I've been in this role for a couple years. I've been with admissions for even longer, and I just love supporting students and helping them with this process. It's really hard to apply to college and figure out how to do it correctly, and so I love giving students that support and figuring out how to really put their best foot forward in their application.
So today we're covering prompt number 8. Prompt number 8 is, beyond what has already been shared in your application, what do you believe makes you a strong candidate for admissions to the University of California? Devin, what do you think about this prompt? Are there any tips? What do you think about someone that chooses to answer prompt number 8?
Yeah, so this one I think is probably one of the most difficult to answer well. That doesn't mean you shouldn't use it. I don't have a preferred question for anyone throughout any of the PIQs, but for question 8, I think so many students try and answer it thinking, this is the question I need to answer to make myself stand out so that I'm going to be the most competitive and get selected. And that's not necessarily always a successful attempt. And so usually what I tell students, instead of picking a question that you think is going to be a good one that we're going to like as readers or that they really think is interesting, I want them to go backwards. I want them to think about what are the things that I want to talk about myself that are important, and then looking at the questions, what matches that information the best. And if you find that questions 1 through 7 don't really fit the information you want to share, that's when question 8 is going to be your best friend. But if you really have all these things that fit in other places, sometimes that other question can be really difficult to answer.
So is there a way that someone has answered prompt number 8 that has stuck with you throughout the years that you can bring out right now that, is a good example of
that did really well? Yeah. So I think it's less about the content they specifically choose and more about making sure that they're really digging deep and talking about why that information is really critical for me to understand. I think that's a really common problem across any PIQ response. A common missed opportunity is that students really don't dig deep. And so for this one, it's probably the most important that they really connect the dots so that when I'm reading it, I'm like, okay, you're answering basically this open-ended question of why I should consider you as a competitive applicant. That's a really difficult thing to answer. And so something that I think was really successfully done was when a student talked about their personal identity, but not just talking about, I don't need to know the cultural background and history of them, of the culture in general, but telling me how it impacts them in their everyday life and how they've used that to build community or whatever it is that's important to them. So I would say that was a really strong example. And some students will talk about things that maybe could fit in other questions, but that the way that the question was structured, they didn't like it as much. So I had a student talk about photography, which could be creativity or a skill, could be a lot of different things. But the student decided to talk about how they view the world through the lens of their camera. And so that was a really unique way to talk about it as well.
Are there any red flags that you can think of that, students should stay away from when answering prompt number 8?
I'd say, kind of as I already mentioned, I really would discourage students from looking at it and answering it point blank. I think that's when it gets really, really hard to do that successfully and give me information that I can really use to get to know them better. Because that's really what the PIQs are for. It's for a complete stranger reading your application to get to know you and determine if you're a competitive applicant for an institution. That's a lot of pressure to put on an application, but that's why we're here to kind of give those students that insight as to how we're looking at it. So making sure students really put in very concrete examples of what's going on, clear definitions of what they're trying to share, and that self-reflection is the thing that's overlooked the most and provides us the most insight into them and makes their responses super unique. So just telling me that they played piano for 10 years is really awesome, but why do they play piano? Why is it special to them? Have they overcome challenges? What have they learned from it? How have they built community or contributed to other people through this skill or this experience? And so that's what I really want to get down to. And too often what I miss in those PIQs, especially in the 8th one.
So for anyone who's answering the personal insight questions right now, filling out their applications, they want to come to either UC Davis, any of the UCs. Do you have any words of advice, affirmations?
I would say that students should definitely start drafting early. And I think something that will really help have a really clear response is reading it out loud. You don't have to read it out loud to anybody, but taking your response, whatever draft it's in, and reading it out loud, just so that you can hear what it sounds like, because you're going to catch those weird run-on sentences that you're like, wow, this should be 3 separate sentences. Why is this so long and confusing? You're going to catch those weird, other grammatical funky things that are hard to follow, because we're not going to be judging students based on the spelling or grammar of their PIQs. That's not what they're for. They're not writing samples. But when it gets in the way of clarity, it makes it difficult for us to understand what they're trying to tell us. So taking your time, working on things in advance, reading it out loud to yourself, and being yourself. So having your own voice in there. A lot of students want to use AI. That's a great tool to kind of help you if you're stuck. But we want your voice. And so when students are doing something like using ChatGPT or whatever, that's going to be someone else's voice, and that's not going to be anything new. That's going to be creating something based on what's already out there in the world. So we want something that the student has created, and that's going to be their best opportunity to be successful.
That's great advice. Thank you, Devin.
Absolutely.
Make sure to tune in for all the other episodes that we have covering each of the 8 prompts for the personal insight question tips, and thank you for joining us.